Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to our European friends. We're going to get rolling in just a second here, but as a reminder, before we jump in, please make any purchasing decisions based on currently available products from Salesforce. We may have some forward-looking statements today. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. The topic of the day is decision guides, and the man of the hour is Tom Leddy. He's going to be talking about a lot of the great work that he's been doing over the last few months. Tom does have a support team around him, including our Salesforce Architect evangelists, including myself. I'm Justin Piehowski, and I will hand it over to my peers, the other evangelists, to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Justin. I am Nevia Van Wright, Principal Architect Evangelist, and happy to be with you all today.
Yeah, and hello, everyone. My name is Shobi Abdi. I'm also a Principal Architecture Evangelist here on the Salesforce Architects team, and looking forward to having an engaging LinkedIn Live session with everybody all over the world.
Yeah, we're really excited to jump into this with Tom, and you'll be hearing from myself as well as Nevia and Shobi throughout the event with questions for Tom. We also want to hear from you in the chat, so please do share any questions that you have in the comments, and we'll do our best to get those over to Tom for that insight. So then, without further ado, let's jump over to the decision guides, and I'm going to introduce Tom Leddy. He's definitely someone that doesn't need an introduction to architects around the world in our ecosystem. As we mentioned, has been spending a lot of time over the last few months thinking about these decision guides that we publish on our website, whether it's record triggered, event driven, creating forms. Tom, why don't you give us an overview and tell us what you've got in store for us today?
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, this is it's great to be here with everybody, and great to see everybody on another LinkedIn Live too. I know it's been a little while since we've done one of these, but they're always they're always really great to be able to talk to everybody. And one of the other things I want to make sure to add is feel free to add any questions or comments or thoughts in the chat. One of the things Shobi asked earlier is if anybody in the audience, if you've actually used decision guides. I would love to hear more about how you're using them and what you're specifically doing with them, especially, since I am the product director for decision guides, I'd love to hear what we can do to make them better and more useful for you as well. But if you haven't used decision guides, let me give you a little bit of background about what they are. So before I came to Salesforce, I'll share a little bit about my background. I was an enterprise architect, and one of the biggest challenges that I always had was deciding what the right tool to use was for the right job. Because as we all know, if you've been an architect for any length of time, you know that there are a lot of different products and tools that are available, not just from Salesforce, but from any vendor, but mainly, we're focused on Salesforce here, but tools that kind of have overlapping functionality. And when you're trying to design a solution, you're asking yourself, well, okay, it looks like both of these tools kind of do the same thing. Why would I choose one versus another? And sometimes that can be a long, drawn out discussion. Sometimes you don't even know. Like a lot of times I would make my choice based on my best guess, because I would be just going and Googling for information that was out there. I could kind of find some things that looked like they were driving me in the right direction, but it still felt like I was just kind of making a guess. And one of the things that we're attempting to do with decision guides is kind of demystify some of that and just give a straightforward comparison of, if you're trying to solve this problem, here's the things that you need to be thinking about. Here's a list of tools that will help. And then here's the different attributes that you can do a side-by-side comparison, and why you might want to use one tool versus another. So that's our product comparisons for feature fit guidance. One of the other things that we do with decision guides is guidelines for product and investment changes. So you'll see as you scroll through any decision guide, and I'm going to get into a demo of one in a little bit, we will see that there's actually roadmap information. So you can see tools. If you're comparing tools, you can see here's what's available now, but also here's what's on the roadmap, and here's what might be available within the next 12 months. So if you're making a decision and you're making a decision not to purchase a tool just because there's that one feature that you really need, and and now you're going to have to customize it and use another tool. Well, if you can see that it's on the roadmap, that's actually good to know. Maybe you don't have to build a custom solution. You can select the tool now and then just wait a little bit, and then it'll that feature will be available. And then the other thing that I want to point out about decision guides is that they just contain just straight up detailed technical information. There's not a hidden sales pitch anywhere. We're not saying that you should buy one tool over another one. And we actually try to point out where we can if a tool requires an additional license, or if it's something that just comes as part of the platform and you might have it available. So the goal is not to sell you products. The goal is so that you can do a thorough analysis as an architect, make a comparison, select the right tools, and then it'll be that much less likely for you to run into issues when you are doing your implementation later on. And so who are decision guides for? Well, that's anybody that is trying to evaluate trade-offs and choose the correct Salesforce products for a given set of requirements. So probably by the time you're getting ready to look at a decision guide, you know what it is that you're trying to do, and you probably know what you're trying to do at a high level, but you're still trying to get a little bit more information about, okay, what specific features do I need to really be thinking about? And, why would I want to be going in a certain direction? Are there any real key considerations that I need to know about that maybe I haven't thought about? All of that information you'll find in the decision guide. And then evaluate implementation options for Salesforce products and select the best approach. So, you're probably more than likely, if you're an architect, you're dealing with some pretty complex requirements. Your overall IT landscape is probably fairly complex, and you're trying to figure out how do all of these different tools that I'm going to be implementing fit together, and that information you will find in a decision guide as well.
So actually, before you go, Tom, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So one of the things you said, right, is you talk about architects and complex implementations, right? That's music to so many people's ears, right? But I guess what's the spectrum, right? When you look at decision guides and their impact, what's that spectrum of individual that you kind of see, oh, this is useful for you in these circumstances?
Oh yeah. So I can think about if we think about the stages of a project, right? And you're going through, and initially upfront, you're probably going to have somebody that is looking at your overall architecture. You just have maybe a high level set of requirements. You kind of know the direction you want to go in. At that point, you're looking for more basic information. Do I have the tools available already, or do I maybe need to purchase something? And what's the right combination, right? So, from that point, you're thinking more about from an enterprise architecture perspective, right? You're going to use your decision guides there to choose the tools, make sure that if you do have to make a purchase, you've got you understand why and what it is. As you go through the rest of your project, you're going to get more and more detailed, and you're going to start doing more detailed design. That's when you're going to start going into some of the guidance that's available in decision guides. So if I'm thinking about our event-driven architecture guide, for example, it will show all of the different tools that are available to build event-driven architectures. But it also has things like, well, what's the replay period? Or can I create a custom payload? Or, any of that kind of information. You're going to, as you get more and more detailed with your designs, you're going to need to know those things. And those are the types of attributes that you're going to be comparing. And so from that point of view, you're thinking more along the lines of, the solution architecture that you're doing. And then hopefully
makes sense.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then why are decision guides important? So, like we've been saying, it can be hard to evaluate some of these different trade-offs. There's a wide array of tools that are available for Salesforce, and I can almost guarantee that anything that you're trying to do, if you think about how would I actually do this from when I think about all the different technical ways that I can solve any problem, there's probably at least a dozen ways to solve any problem, right? But which is the right way, right? And so it can be hard to evaluate those trade-offs. And if you understand what all the different options are, and you understand them, and you know thoroughly, what are the different attributes, what direction do I want to go in, this is where you start to, your solutions, you can ensure that you're going to have a higher ROI, because you're not building some weird custom thing or trying to shoehorn a tool into a scenario that it wasn't really designed for, but it kind of looks like it'll work for that. You'll have a lower likelihood of purchasing unnecessary products. So like I said, the nice thing about decision guides is we're not really trying to sell you anything. We're just giving you the straightforward comparison for architects, and how does this tool work versus how does this other tool work. Maybe that means you need to buy something, maybe it doesn't, but the point is this way you understand what's available. And if you already have something in your landscape that's available as you go through your decision guide, guess what? Now you don't have to buy something additional. So your lower likelihood of purchasing something you don't need, and then just over time, greater maintainability, because the whole thing that I was talking about earlier, if you try to shoehorn the wrong product into a solution just because it kind of works, and then you find out down the road that yeah, it works, but here's all these caveats. Now I have to customize this, and I have to add this, and I have to make this change that I wasn't planning to make. That doesn't only hurt your implementation or add cost to your implementation and increase your timeline. It also means longer term you're going to have to maintain all of those customizations, and somebody's going to have to be responsible for saying, why did we even do this in the first place? Oh yeah, because we picked the wrong tool and we had to make it work, right? So it is going to lower the chance of having that happen, and then 18 to 24 months out something breaks, and it's going to be a lot harder to fix than it would be if you had made the right selections in the first place. And then lower TCO, that kind of ties in with greater maintainability. If something's easier to maintain over the long term, if it's easier to implement because you've got the right tools in place for the right jobs, it's going to cost you a lot less money. And then also more long-term business value, right? If you've got, it's just like any other type of set of tools. If you're using the right tool for the right job, it's going to be a lot easier for you to create value for your business, which is what you're trying to do with any Salesforce implementation in the first place. But also, it's going to be easier for you to make modifications going forward once you get things rolled out to your business users, and you want to make sure that you keep continually delivering that value. And and the other thing is, the Salesforce platform is continuing to expand. So this is something that we know. We've even seen a whole bunch of new announcements just in the last few months about either new products, new features, things that we're continually growing and evolving our entire portfolio of products. You're going to want to stay up to date on making sure that you have the right tools in place. And is this still the right tool? That might be something else you might be looking at. If maybe you implemented something 5 years ago, you need to go make a change to it. Am I even still doing this the right way, or is there something better that I could be doing instead? And thanks for sharing that link, Shelby. Yeah, you can find the latest decision guides on architect.salesforce.com. And we currently have 4 of them, and I'm going to get to in a few minutes. We're actually going to be adding some more, but the 4 that are, so if you go to architect.salesforce.com and you look under the decision guides menu, which we'll do in a minute, you can see that we've got a guide for event-driven architecture, which is around producing and consuming events efficiently. And then when we think about integrations and integrating with external systems asynchronously, what are the tools on the Salesforce side that can do that? So things like platform events, things like MuleSoft, and then what's the best way to do it for a given pattern that you want to implement? And then there's our data integration guide, which is where we talk about kind of the bigger spectrum of integrations where I need to connect to an external system. How should I be doing that? What approach should I be taking? What's the right pattern that I should be looking at depending on the type of data I want to send it and how frequently I need to make updates. Our building forms guide, which was actually just updated today. So if anyone does follow us on LinkedIn or follows me, you may have seen an announcement like about maybe even an hour ago that we just launched a new version of this guide, and I'm going to dig into what that is in a little bit. But it helps you compare the different options for building forms within the Salesforce platform, and some of those require code. Some of them don't, but there's different advantages and disadvantages to being able to do that. And we've got some nice updates, some structural updates to that guide as well. And then the last one is record triggered automations, which is allows you to compare different performance design considerations for a variety of different use cases. And that is when you think about any type of automation that you want to launch based on some type of add or change or update to a record, and if you want to make that and have it trigger some type of automation in Salesforce, there's ways to do that with Apex. There's ways to do it with Flow, and then depending on what it is that you're specifically trying to do, there are sometimes that one or the other tool might be a better choice. So those are the 4 that we have available now. We've actually got 2 more that are coming.
So Tom, before you go there, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I know you mentioned that you updated the building forms guide as of today. If I'm a user of the building forms guide, are there new things that I should be on the lookout for and excited about?
Absolutely, yes. And I'll get to in a little bit. I'm actually going to demo that guide, so we're gonna walk through that specifically because I do want to highlight what you should be looking for as a user, because ideally the updates to this guide are going to cascade to all of the other guides over the next several months. And so what I'm going to be looking for is some feedback from anybody too about how useful is this, how easy is it to find the information you're looking for. If you've seen the old version of the guide from before it was updated, would love to hear your thoughts about how the new structure looks. And then also, and even if you haven't, you can look at any of the other guides that are still kind of in the old format. So, but yeah, we will definitely be diving into that really shortly here, as a matter of fact. So,
exciting. Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of that, we'll take a look. So the anatomy of a decision guide is, so this is basically the way that all of the guides either are currently structured or will be structured. So some of them are not exactly like this, but like I said, I'm working on getting them all kind of a more consistent look and feel. Anybody that has been using, I saw that a few people mentioned that they're using decision guides already. One of the things you might notice is today, if you go from one guide to another, they're not quite consistent, and some of them, they were designed for specific purposes. I don't want to dig too far into the history of how the guides came about, but a lot of them were designed for a very specific purpose at a specific point in time, and they looked really well for, if we looked at them as an individual guide. But what we're starting to do now is take a step back, look at them a little bit more holistically, and also look at how they relate to some of our other tools like Well Architected, and think about how we can provide the maximum amount of value for everybody. And one of those ways to do that is by making them consistent. So this is, like I said, they're not all 100% here yet, but this is the basic anatomy of what we're looking at. The overview. We're gonna have a section that talks about what you'll be able to find in a specific decision guide, a list of key takeaways, which is kind of like the TLDR. So if you learn nothing else from this guide and you forget everything, because if you look through the decision guides, they're all about a 45-minute read, or some of them are even longer than that. What if we wanted to boil it down to a handful of specific points of architectural considerations? We've got a bulleted list of those. An overall comparison table that compares all the, lists out all of the different products you're going to see throughout the guide. And then a list of different scenarios and what you need to be considering for each scenario. So how do you, what are the problems you need to be thinking about for each approach? And then a list of some additional considerations, like information that you should know regardless of what you're doing in the guide. So if I want to think about data integrations, what are all the things that I should be, or in general, should I be considering regardless of which tool I decide to go with? So those are at the end, and then at the very bottom, there's some closing remarks and a link to a survey for some feedback, which we're always happy to have. So how would you actually solve a problem with your decision guide? So there's a couple things. So the first is you need to know when to even use the decision guide in the first place, which is, anytime you need to choose between products or architectural approaches. So if you've got features that seem to overlap with each other in two different tools or products that you're considering, if you're not really clear on what the trade-offs for an approach are. So I am, an architect, I know I've got these two tools. Maybe you even have both of those tools already in your landscape, and you're just not sure which one to use or why you would want to use one versus another. You can actually compare the attributes and see a little bit more about what the trade-offs are. And we'll get into that a little bit when we get into our demo. It'll be a little bit more clear. And then also potential financial implications for your organization. So do I really need to buy a tool, or am I good with the one that I have already? So once you understand when you need to use a decision guide, the next thing to do is to know where to find what you need. And that is where you determine the problem that you're trying to solve at a high level. And then you can select your guide from the ones that we have available. We do have 2 more that are coming out soon. I'll get into those in a minute. And then make sure the guides are aligned to the architectural topics, and then they're broken into sections that go through different scenarios that have where you can do trade-off analyses and make your selections. So an example use case, I've got a few of these. So, my requirement, my landscape, if I've got a lot of legacy systems, I've got size limitations for messages, and I need to determine if there's an asynchronous integration pattern that'll help me reduce message sizes, right? So that is it's a good use case for event-driven architecture. And if I open that guide, I can see that there's a pattern called a pass messages pattern that can transform messages and remove unnecessary information. And then there's also a pattern called the claim check pattern, where we're only sending message headers and storing the message body in an external database. So both of those are options to transform messages. And underneath those patterns in the guide itself, I'll be able to see, okay, once I make my decision and I read a little bit more about the 2 patterns, I decide which one I want to go with. Here's a list of tools available that I can use to implement that. And then I can drill down into, and why would I why would I choose one tool versus another? Or I need a low-code tool to build an outbound integration to an external system. It's our data integration guide. So you already know that you need a low-code tool. Maybe that's because you know that your staff has doesn't have a lot of developers that are going to be able to maintain your integrations long-term. So you want something that doesn't require a lot of code. So we're going to then take a look at the data integration guide. We're going to see what's available, and change data capture is one option. MuleSoft Composer, which is another option, although that one is being deprecated, so it won't be an option for much longer. But the idea is you can go through and you can see that these are 2 options, right? And then same thing with record trigger automations, and we can go through each guide. But the idea is you're kind of thinking through, here's what I need to do. Here's here's some of my constraints. Then we go to the guide, we figure out the trade-offs, and then go to the tools from there.
Hey, Tom, I have a question. That's a great point. Thinking about the trade-offs that architects are going to make within an organization, this sets them up great. But as we know, the next part is to take this to stakeholders and say, here's why I'm thinking we should do what we should do. Here's the trade-offs I'm considering. Do you find that someone using a decision guide from Salesforce can add credibility to stakeholder conversations, such as, I think we should do this, and they actually bring what they see in the decision guide to their stakeholders to kind of help make their case?
100%. Yeah. That, in fact, that is one of the biggest benefits to not only decision guides, but all of the tools that are available on the Salesforce Architects website is, I know, and we've all probably been in this situation where we've had to go have a conversation with stakeholders. And I know personally, I've had to do this both as an employee who is going to talk to my CEO or CIO and mention that, we need to make this purchase, or, we need to go in this direction, or whatever it is. And I've also done it as a consultant that's had to convince my customers, where it's one thing if I just throw a slide deck together and say, here is why I think we should be doing this. That's great. But there's also, you're likely to get pushback. And I'm guessing almost everybody on this call has seen this, where you get pushback of, well, how do you know that? Why do you think that? And you're kind of going there on your own and saying, well, just based on my experience, that's just what we should be doing. This gives you an opportunity to provide an actual piece of reference that is on an official Salesforce website and say, look, this is not just me saying this. I'm saying this because I did this research. Here's the specific document I found. And not only is it telling us this is the right tool, here's a nice little it's in a nice table format that says, here's all the attributes, here's why we should be doing it. And it's going to be a lot easier to have those stakeholder conversations once you've got that backing you up, for sure.
Absolutely. We're the wind at the back of architects.
Right. All right. So the next thing, what I am going to do is, let me share this tab instead. and we will switch over. So I'm guessing, I know a few people said they've used architect decision guides before. More than likely, if you haven't used decision guides, I'm hoping that you've seen at least some part of the Salesforce Architects website. If not, it is architect.salesforce.com. You can find all of our decision guides. You can also find the well-architected framework, our Salesforce diagram framework, and then even a few other resources that I'm going to touch on really briefly if we have some time towards the end. But if we take a look at decision guides, I can see, if I click see all guides, we'll see the 4 that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to right now drill into the building forms guide. And what we've got is a similar to what we saw in the outline a little earlier. We've got our guide overview. So, what is this and why should I care about it as an architect? We try to cover that right off the bat. And then we get our key takeaways, right? So if you learn nothing else from this guide, I think this particular one has 6. There's different numbers in all of them, but these are the 6 things you should remember, right? So when you're building create, edit, view layouts for Lightning pages, make sure that you use dynamic forms. And you can actually see if we read, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see that page layouts, we're not planning on making any updates to them. Yes, obviously you can still update you can still use page layouts and modify them. It's not the best approach anymore. You're going to want to go with dynamic forms. But if you need to create or edit form with just one object, start with Lightning pages. If you're building a multi-page form wizard and you don't have strict UX or branding requirements, then you can start with ScreenFlow. And we're going to go through all of these. So these are the 6. If we go a little further, we've got a list of, here's the different tools we're going to be looking at in this guide specifically. Some of the skills required. So one of the things that you're always going to want to think about when you're making any kind of architectural decision is what is the makeup of your team? Who is going to be implementing this? Who is going to be maintaining it? Do you actually have developers available? If there's a tool that says pro code, are you going to be able to make modifications to it, even if you're working with an implementation partner that says, sure, we can help you, we can build whatever, and then that partner rolls off your project, and then someone's going to have to maintain it. So you're going to want to use that as part of your decision making. Any additional license requirements? So Omni Studio, you'll see it mentioned throughout the guide in a variety of different scenarios, but one of the things you're going to want to remember is that it requires an industries package. So if you're not an industries customer, Omni Studio might not be, or is not going to be the solution for you because you're not going to have that package. And then as we go through, what are our specific decision points? So as I'm thinking about, in this case, I want to build a form. What are the things I need to actually be thinking about with my form, right? So one is your, object impact, right? Is it operating against a single object or multiple objects? How are your fields going to fit logically? Are they going to fit into a single screen? Do you need your users to create a wizard where you're navigating across multiple screens? Where do you want to put your form, right? So is it just going on a Lightning page? Is it going to be available on a mobile app? Or even is an external website? And one of the updates to this guide in particular is we talk about Lightning Out specifically, and how to embed a Lightning web component in an external website. What types of actions or logic do you need to perform behind the scenes? Do you need any additional validation that goes beyond the standard system validation? How are you going to handle security, interaction design, styling, layout? We can go through all these, but this is a list of considerations you should be thinking about if you're even considering building a form on Salesforce. And then as we go through, we'll start talking about, we go a little deeper into each one of those decision points. So as you're thinking about object impact, if you're working with a single object, most of these tools are great. Cross object, good. Object agnostic, dynamic forms, it's not going to be available. And then we've got, one of the new additions is we've added diagrams. So if anybody has seen the original version of the guide, or a lot of the other decision guides, they didn't really have any visual depictions of how some of these things work. So this is a new version to a new addition to the version of this guide that's just been released this week. So you can take a look, but we actually go into detail about, if you need to build an integration, or if you need to, in this case, we're talking about how Omni Studio uses integration procedures and data mapper to handle data from the Salesforce data model, or even an external data source. And then you can see one of the other things that I had mentioned earlier is that some of these things like progress indicators and the ability to jump between steps and screens, they're maybe not available for screen flow right now, but they are on the roadmap. And at the top of each guide, I don't know if anybody saw this, but if right at the top of the guide overview, we actually mention what the roadmap projections are. So this one is particularly, it goes through June 2025. So if something says roadmap in any of these tables, what you can expect is that by June 2025, it'll be available in one of the releases that come out between now and then. And then you'll see some other things that just say not ideal. So not ideal is, yes, I can use this tool to solve the problem, but it is not the best choice. And when we get down into the actual text that's below the table, that's where we dig a little bit deeper into maybe why Lightning Web Components are not ideal in this particular scenario. And then as you can see, all of these different scenarios, they kind of repeat. Some of these, they might say available, but they've got some caveats. So you can see down at the bottom here what those specific caveats are. But maybe an app isn't supporting something, or field service Lightning doesn't support it, but you can use it with other mobile apps, whatever that is. And then we can continue. And then when we get down to our additional topics, so this basically repeats over and over again for each type of consideration. As we get down to our additional topics, these are things that what I had mentioned before, the idea of like navigating the low code to pro code continuum. So regardless of which tools you select throughout the guide, these are some things you're going to need to know if you want to build a form within Salesforce, no matter what. So, thinking through, how do you need any specialized skills? How are you going to deliver it? How are you going to maintain it? Some information about page layouts and, why they're not necessarily the ideal choice anymore. And then some other things about how do some of these tools perform against each other as well. And then at the end, we've got our closing remarks, and we've also got our survey that, as I said, we're always looking for feedback.
Actually, Tom, can you scroll back up a little bit just
Sure.
to where you had some of those metrics?
Yes.
Like talk about those metrics a little bit, right? Because it's a very it's something that's pretty noticeable in some of the decision guides and some of our prescriptive guidance. Right?
Yeah.
How do you get to that? Who helps you get to that?
That's actually our engineering teams that are providing some of these measurements, and they're going through and testing. In some cases, in this one, it's a case study for comparing performance of Aura versus Lightning Web Components, and so we saw that not only was the development experience more aligned to current web development standards, which using Lightning Web Components, but you can actually see that the performance gains are pretty significant, right? So sometimes up to almost 25% of cold cache and then gains, and then up to like over 60% of warm cache gains. So you can see, and the record triggered automation guide also does a lot of good comparisons of Apex versus Flow. So I know that's actually a common question that people ask is, okay, if I use Flow, that's great. I can do all this drag and drop and it's declarative, but is it going to affect my performance? Is it going to perform worse? And the answer is, in some scenarios it will, in some scenarios it won't, but that's what the guide is for, so that you can think about what problem you're really trying to solve. And why do I need to be considering it? So performance is definitely one of the considerations you're going to want to be thinking about as well.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. And then do we have any other questions, or I can jump into some of the fundamentals docs also?
So there are no questions coming in, but I do have a couple of things that I just wanted to share as I listened here, that I loved the diagrams and visuals. I was deeply appreciative of the roadmap projections. I know as architects, you need to make decisions. And then I love the questions to ask, because it was very empowering as an architect to know which way to go forward. One question I will ask is this for architects only?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. So the nice thing is, this can be for anybody that is trying to do make any kind of architectural decision. So, one of the things that we talk about, so I know that, we see that they are on the architect's website, and, most of the guides have names like Architect's Guide to Building Forms on Salesforce or things like that. So typically the people that will use them will be architects, but one of the things we see in a lot of scenarios is you work for a smaller organization. Your organization doesn't have a team of dedicated architects, but somebody still needs to make these decisions about, what tool should I select? Am I going in the right direction? Did I select the right tools? And if you're doing architectural work on the Salesforce platform and you need to make architectural decisions, decision guides are definitely for you.
Thanks, Tom.
I try to make sure everybody gets in the video and it's being weird. All right, cool. Good question I got, Tom. Like when you made some of the updates to the building forms ones, how often do you keep these guides up to date?
So we are updating them. So as of right now, we're trying to keep them up to date quarterly, and that doesn't mean every guide gets updated every quarter, but the guides will be updated, or at least one of the guides will be updated on a quarterly basis. And I'm working on still getting that cadence a little bit smooth. So if people have known, building forms the decision guides have been around for quite a while, and if you've noticed in the past, they would be kind of updated at different intervals. I'm working on getting a more regular cadence for that, but the goal is that we'll do them kind of on a rolling quarterly update, quarterly cadence rather.
Yeah, we've actually got a question from the audience, Zane Turner, I believe.
Oh yeah.
What is next for decision guides?
So yeah, that's a great question, and it's funny because I've been mentioning that a few times throughout the session, and I've been meaning to bring it up. So we've got number one, consistency across the existing guides. So you'll start to see the structures change so that they're more consistent with each other, and additional tools and scenarios will be added to the existing guides. But one of the things that I'm really happy to announce is that we have 2 new decision guides that are coming out this year. One of them is going to be about asynchronous processing. So when you think about using, future methods and or queuable methods in Apex versus maybe platform events versus, any of the variety of tools that are available for async processing, we're going to have a guide for that coming out in fairly short order, hopefully within, hopefully before Dreamforce. I don't want to give a specific date, but and then we also have a guide that is going to be coming out specifically around customer data strategy, and that is going to be, as we think, we know Data Cloud is obviously huge for for Salesforce. There are a lot of questions about it. How do I use it? What is the right use case for Data Cloud versus another tool? How do I manage my data? How do I think about all the different stages in the data processing spectrum or continuum? That is coming out. That one is still, we're working on the draft for that, and it should be out later this year. So that is those are my 2 exciting new guides that I'm happy to announce.
Amazing. Yeah, the questions are starting to come in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So we got a great question. So we got actually a suggestion from Jacqueline, right? There's also just got on process-driven integration.
Oh yes. That is a great idea. So yeah, integrations between Salesforce to a back-end ERP system, for example, and that might be something good for us to look at as we're making updates to the data integration decision guide. So yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Another question that we have from Galura is there any specific diagram for B2B B2C Commerce Cloud? I will take that one on.
Sure.
So we do have a handful of diagrams, guidance within the diagramming framework. So I put the link earlier on in the chat, where essentially if you go there, there's a handful of them where you'll see specific system diagrams and like landscape diagrams around B2B, B2C, B2B use cases involving commerce. All right. So if you have any questions on that, then you can feel free to use some of the feedback and survey mechanisms that are on the diagram page itself. Okay. And one of the last questions, I know Abhinav asked a question early on, will this be uploaded to YouTube? And the answer is yes. So this is a recording. It will be uploaded to YouTube. And, but I would say give us a little bit of time as we get this thing edited and get it going.
Awesome. Looking forward to that.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for coming today, and thanks, Tom. This was a great session with a lot of good information looking at what we have on decision guides and where we're going. But we are not done with LinkedIn Lives yet. As you probably know, we're thinking hard about Dreamforce and what we want to do for architects at Dreamforce. So our next LinkedIn Live will be on Tuesday, August 20th at 10 a.m. Central. And we'll even bring in a wider team, and we'll be talking about what's in store for San Francisco this September. A lot of really cool, really exciting stuff coming up for architects. So we hope you can join us for that to get a bit of a sneak preview. And that is all we have today, folks. Thanks so much. Please sign up for our LinkedIn Live on the 20th and look for more content coming from Salesforce Architects.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
All right, bye.
Have a good day.